25 minutes to 4. Thomas Ariti with you on Drive on 702 ABC Sydney this afternoon. You'll be aware, I imagine by now, of the heated discussion surrounding the government's plans to sell a number of defence sites, including Victoria Barracks in Paddington and HMAS Penguin in Mosman. There's been a strong reaction from veteran groups, housing, heritage, community organisations as well, all since the announcement of this major defence divestment plan in February. Occupying 15 hectares in Paddo, the site of the Victoria Barracks dates back to the 1840s. But if the site's sold, surely it'll retain heritage status, right? One would think it might. Apparently not. That's according to Liberal member Jackie Munro. She's tabling a bill in State Parliament today in the Upper House. She says she'll ensure preservation of the sites with this bill. Jackie Munro is the New South Wales Shadow Minister for the Environment and Heritage. She's with us on the line now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Thomas.
Can you explain this? So if the sites are sold, they are no longer heritage listed. Is that right?
That's right. It's a little bit of an involved system, but at a national level, there are two heritage registers. So one of them is called the National Heritage Register, and that has things like the Sydney Opera House, which are of national significance. The other one is the Commonwealth Heritage Register, and that register only applies heritage status to sites that are owned by the Commonwealth Government. And that is where Victoria Barracks and sites like HMAS Penguin lie. So they are only given heritage status and protection when they are owned by the Commonwealth Government. So the effect of the divestment of these assets by the Commonwealth Government means that their heritage status will be lifted with it.
Because I feel like there's a bit of a misconception in the community around this divestment plan. Then we've been talking about it a lot over time, and whether it be Victoria Barracks or whether it be Lancer Barracks, here in Parramatta as well, there's a lot of them. There's this idea that the buildings would stay there, they'd remain put, and whatever developer picked them up would have to work within that framework. You're saying no, they could actually, under the current laws, be completely razed.
That's right. And this is, as you say, it's common sense that these sites would be protected as our historic defence sites. They have incredible military history. They're also often very beautiful buildings, sandstone sites, and certainly with HMAS Penguin, we have the iconic Angophora Forest, which lines that harbour coastline. It's absolutely beautiful. It actually borders the national park there too. These are at literal risk of development without change to their heritage status at a state level, and that's what we are calling for. But the government has declined to take that action.
Okay, I want to get to the government's response in a moment, but you're tabling a bill today. What will your bill do, Jackie Munro?
So just a slight correction, it's actually being tabled in the lower house by one of my colleagues. So
I meant to point out, sorry, I know you're an upper house MP, but I meant to I meant to point out, obviously bills are tabled in the lower house. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, they can be tabled in our house as well, but this particular one is being introduced in the lower house.
Yeah.
And the function of this is to protect a range of specified sites, which includes the Lancer Barracks, HMAS Penguin, Vic Barracks, the RAF base at Glenbrook, and also Timor Barracks from development and destruction. And the way that it does that is that it would require any rezoning, which would be required for serious development and destruction, to actually be done through an act of Parliament, not just through an opaque state significant development proposal, for example. So this is really about ensuring that anything that happens to these sites happens in the light of day, and we believe that this is a strong enough mechanism to prevent the development and destruction of these sites.
The state significant development issue, I think, plays in here, doesn't it, quite significantly, because there's this race. The government's got a very ambitious housing target in New South Wales, and in only a few years' time. So these SSDs, as we've been discussing on the program, allow the government to circumvent the decision-making powers of local government and make decisions about these huge housing projects itself. They go straight to the planning minister. Do you think, given that ambitious housing target and the increase we're seeing in what's being declared as state significant developments, if your bill doesn't work, yes, some of these heritage sites are genuinely at risk?
Absolutely, and that is our fear. And we've seen so far with this increase in state significant development applications and proposals and approvals that the community is very often sidelined. So the things that local governments and councillors want, the things that local communities are calling for in their submissions are actually not being taken into account at all, which is a really massive problem. And when it comes to sites that, as you referred to before, it absolutely makes sense that these would be heritage listed. They are at real risk.
Now, you spoke...
And sorry, I would also just say that if they weren't at risk, the government should support this bill that we have, but also the Minister for Heritage should be a lot clearer in the answers that she's given, because so far she has given answers that suggest she is not doing anything to investigate even the implications of the sale of these sites on heritage.
Okay, good timing, because you spoke in Parliament yesterday about this. Here's some of what the New South Wales Minister of the Environment and Heritage, Penny Sharp, had to say in response.
When it comes to heritage, the point that I would make is this, is that as a general rule, those sites, because they have been unchanged for a long period of time, have had protection but are not necessarily listed, and are not listed on things like the State Heritage Register. It is always open to people to go through the independent process through the Heritage Council to make an application for consideration of those, and that's something that they can do. In terms of what the government's doing, is the government has developed a heritage strategy. We've also worked very closely on new heritage laws, which I hope to bring to the Parliament very soon. We will look at the heritage arrangements if there's changes to those sites.
Okay, that's Penny Sharp there, the New South Wales Minister for the Environment and Heritage, speaking in Parliament yesterday to you, Jackie Munro. Jackie is the Shadow Minister for the Environment and Heritage, who is here with us on 702 ABC Sydney Drive. Doesn't that answer the problem, though? Could the sites just be put on the State Heritage Register?
Well, they could be, but this idea that the government is waiting for somebody else to do it is quite absurd. There is a specific provision in the Heritage Act which allows the minister to direct the Heritage Council, it's her department, it's her responsibility to investigate the heritage implications of these sites and make advice as to whether these sites should be heritage listed. I really can't understand why the government wouldn't undertake this process automatically, given the federal government's obvious intentions to divest these sites. And this is the very puzzling part of it, that the minister has declined to take responsibility for something that is very clearly within her purview, within her responsibility and within her power.
I've got a text in here from Andrew at Avalon Beach, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, but I see the point you're making, Andrew. Andrew says, well, hang on, if the same metrics that were applied to the Defence Estate to save costs for the national budget were applied to Kirribilli House and Admiralty House on Sydney Harbour, we would also be handing those sites to developers. Does the Prime Minister and does the Governor-General, do they need a second home given how little they're used? Are they fit for purpose? Andrew at Avalon Beach says. Interesting comparison there, Jackie Munro. I'm sure that was tongue-in-cheek, but yeah, where do you stop? Let's say, though, the sites are sold to developers, this happens. What limitations would be put on them to change the buildings if that heritage status was in place?
Well, if the heritage status is in place, then there are significant provisions that any developer would have to comply with, and that is dependent on the site. So each site would be addressed individually to determine what those provisions would be. But this is always the thing with heritage, often like the environment, like the arts, that sometimes we struggle to put an economic value on these sites for the culture of our nation to be preserved and for our history to be respected. These sites, obviously, heritage sites can be monetised in various ways, whether it's things like the Norman Lindsay Gallery, for example. The National Trust looks after that, and people can go in there and you have concerts in the gardens. It's a great way to open up these sites, but they have heritage protection. They have state heritage protection. These sites don't, and that is what we are calling on the government to undertake the process of achieving.
How do you feel about this text, Jackie Munro? Hi, Thomas. This listener says the heritage value of the barracks in Paddington is arguable, but the land should not be sold for private development. Affordable housing options should be prioritised and assessed. If you were in government and you were the Minister for Environment and Heritage, would you agree with that? Don't sell it off to private developers.
Well, I would say that the barracks need to be saved for what they are, and they can be used as a museum, for example, or they could be used to open up the public and have some sort of public use that aligns with its historic use as a barracks. But we
not housing, you think it should retain some sort of defence significance, or it should be opened up to land for the public?
That would certainly be my preference as a Shadow Heritage Minister or a Heritage Minister if we're elected. That's certainly my preference. And we have an extensive housing plan that ensures that obviously we need more housing. We all know that. And that is separate to a site like this. And that's where we need to really be smart about where strategic planning and policy goes. It's how do we preserve the nature and character of our communities while still allowing more homes to be built.
Nellie in Gordon says, Thomas, the New South Wales government is not interested in heritage values. They've refused to engage with communities where heritage is impacted by developers, and this is the same. The government ministers and the Premier are just saying, forget heritage, just go ahead and build. That remark there from Nellie in Gordon. It sounds like Jackie Munro, you might agree with Nellie there. Jackie is the New South Wales Shadow Minister for the Environment and Heritage, and this bill is being tabled in the lower house. What happens now, Jackie?
So we will go through the process of debating the bill, and obviously the government, if they want to put amendments to that bill, they're welcome to do so, but we are calling on the government to support that bill. We are setting up a petition to call on the government to protect the heritage of these sites, of these incredibly important sites, and that we are able to start this process that is already available to the Minister through the Heritage Act to list these sites.
Okay, we'll keep a close eye on it. As I say, it is an issue a lot of Sydney-siders are very passionate about. Thank you very much for joining us.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. Jackie Munro there, Upper House MLC in the New South Wales Parliament and Shadow Minister for the Environment and Heritage. As I say, that bill is being tabled in the lower house today that Jackie Munro says will ensure preservation of those historic sites in the wake of this major defence divestment plan announced by the federal government in February, and a story will continue to follow closely.